So, for those that have never seen one of my reviews, this is how it's going to go. I'm going to give my non-spoiler thoughts, so that way if you haven't seen Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, you're maybe on the fence about it or whatever, you can hear what I thought without getting spoiled. And then I'm going to dive into plot points, and for that, there will be spoilers. So, first we're going to do the non-spoiler thoughts, and then we're going to go into spoilers. Okay. So, overall, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania isn't the best MCU movie. I don't even think it's the best Ant-Man movie, if I'm being honest. But I had fun watching this movie. Like, I don't regret watching this movie. It was fun. Most of the movie is spent in the quantum realm, so that provides sort of this stunningly beautiful backdrop for the MCU's first project in Phase 5, so that's always a good thing. But also, I think the thing that really sells this movie for me, and this is a lesson for Marvel as a whole, is the fact that I haven't seen a Marvel project since Black Panther Wakanda Forever back in February. It is now the middle of May, and so I think having that long break did help me really enjoy this movie. Because here's the thing, Marvel, we love it, but it is very formulaic in that it all starts to feel the same after a while. And, you know, when you're watching Marvel projects back to back to back to back, it gets very tiresome very quickly. And yeah, so I think definitely Marvel needs to look at pacing within the future, giving, you know, time for the audience to breathe and long for the next Marvel project instead of, oh great, there's another one. Overall, I would say it's worth a watch. Watch Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, because it is fun, but ultimately go in with relatively low expectations. Don't go in expecting a masterpiece, because you're not going to get it, honestly. But it is a fun watch nonetheless, so I recommend watching it. So now I am going to be diving into plot points. So this is the spoiler section. So if you have not seen Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, go watch it or risk being spoiled. You have been warned. Okay. First off, one thing I want to point out is that I really kind of loved the recapping of previous events within the MCU through, you know, Scott's book and the family dinner. Look, sometimes we need exposition because we either haven't seen it or we haven't seen it in a while, and we kind of need a quick recap and find fun ways to do it. Through Scott's book, through the family dinner, I enjoyed that. But also Scott listening to his own book in the car, like, that's a total mood. And I love it. I would 100% do that too. Another thing that I really loved was Cassie calling Hank grandpa. Like, yeah, it's a little weird, but it was kind of fun and I enjoyed it. But one thing I want to note is, how exactly were Hank and Cassie working on mapping the quantum realm without anyone else noticing? Like, where were Scott, Hope, and Janet this whole time? Well, Hank and Cassie were mapping the quantum realm. Like, none of them seem to be aware of this. And it's like, where were you guys? Like, truly, where were you? So that was a little weird. Yeah. Also, Hank fanboying about the fact that there are civilizations in the quantum realm. the best thing ever. Like, he's like, I've studied this. I've always felt it, but now I have confirmation. And it's like, it's just a great thing. I love Hank in this movie, for real. I did enjoy the flashbacks of Janet and Kang and the story that was there. Like, of course, Janet, you know, having been in the quantum realm for so long, she's lonely. She would welcome a friendly face, especially when that friendly face has a way to provide her with a way to get back home, which is ultimately what she wants to do. But I also love the fact that Kang's ship was controlled by his mind, and so when she touched it and everything, she saw all the death and destruction that he had caused, and then that ultimately led her to make the decision to trap him in the quantum realm, even if it meant her never getting back home. All that being said, though, I did find myself basically screaming at the screen that all of this could have been avoided if Janet had just told everybody what happened in the quantum realm when they asked her. It all could have been avoided. We wouldn't have had this movie. I wouldn't have been mad if we didn't have this movie. I'm going to be honest. But I did find myself screaming that a lot. So, yeah. I do want to point out that the residents of the quantum realm, we don't get quite a whole lot of time with them. But I do have two favorites coming out of this, and that is Gentora and Quaz, I think is how you pronounce his name. The mind reader guy. Loved them. They are probably my favorite residents of the quantum realm. They are also probably the only two characters that we really spent any time with. So, is there a correlation? Maybe. But I did love them. Also, Cassie's first movie, you know, as a superhero, I did think it was kind of fun. Again, she's not a master at being the superhero, but she does kind of come into her own in this movie. But ultimately, it's the speech, like the rallying speech that she gives to sort of rally the residents of the quantum realm to come together and fight Kang, that leads me to think that she will probably end up being the leader of the eventual Young Avengers. We haven't seen many people that could fit in the Young Avengers scene. But out of the ones that we have seen, like Kate, Yelena, possibly, even Wanda's kids, whatever their names were. Don't know if Shuri would be part of it as well. Shuri's another contender I think could be leader. But Cassie definitely kind of screams leader to me. And I don't know if I would have put her in that role before this movie, but I think this movie kind of solidified the fact that she is a leader. Now we gotta talk about Darren. He's back as MODOK. Ultimately, it was just meh. Like, I wasn't the biggest fan of Darren in Ant-Man. I think it was the first one. Yeah. Like, I had to remember. I'm like, it was the first one, right? I wasn't his biggest fan then either, and I wasn't the biggest fan of him here. He was just meh. He was there. I don't think we really needed him there, but okay, whatever. At least he came through and helped them in the end, so good on Darren, I guess. Now, of course, it's a Marvel movie. It's a Marvel project. So there has to be a big battle. And for some reason, I was getting Avengers Endgame final battle vibes, and to be honest, I'm not sure this movie earned that big battle. Like, yes, there were plenty of civilizations and residents of the quantum realm that wanted revenge on Kang, and it makes sense that they would rally together and try to take him out, but we didn't know any of them really, and because of that, it kind of felt like the stakes were really low. Like, aside from, Hank and Janet and Scott and Hope and Cassie, like, it was like, okay, like, if they live, great, I want them to live, but if they die, okay. Like, I didn't necessarily have this connection to them, and so therefore the stakes didn't really feel that high to me. Whereas when you look at Avengers Endgame and that final battle, it's like, we know all these people. We have this connection with these people because we've gotten to know them over the course of several different movies. And so when they're going into battle, you're like, oh my gosh, like, I want them to make it out of this. I want them to come out of this. And I think even like Avengers Infinity War had that same vibe, where it's like, yeah, they're all doing this battle. They're all going into this battle, and you want them to succeed. You want them to win. And not just because they're the good guys and Thanos is the bad guy. It's because we actually care about them. Whereas this, it's like, yeah, we want these people to win because they're the good guys and Kang is the bad guy. But you didn't do enough to establish this connection with the viewer and the characters to make it like, I want them to live because I like them versus I want them to live because, well, they're the good guys. And yeah, so I think like it felt very Avengers Endgame, kind of even Avengers Infinity War, just without all the stakes. And yeah, this movie did not really earn that big of a battle. But it was there. It was cool, I guess. I didn't care, really. Like, so, yeah. One thing that this movie does, sort of, is set up the Kang variants as the next MCU big villains. And I say it kind of did that because truly it kind of did that. It really sort of dealt with Kang the Conqueror kind of talking about how all the other variants screwed up and he's fixing it. But ultimately, we spent all this time with Kang the Conqueror. Kang the Conqueror is, the reigning supreme type thing. And then we kill him. But we kill him in the most bizarre, boring way possible. And that is, essentially, he's taken out by Hope and Scott. Ant-Man and Wasp. I love Ant-Man. I love Wasp. I love Scott. I love Hope. Love them. Great. Cool. They should not have been the ones that took him out. Like, I don't think he should have been taken out at all in this movie, because we spent all this time building him up and then we took him out. But ultimately, it's like Ant-Man and Wasp are not exactly the big guns. Like, when we think of, the big heroes that could take out someone like Kang, we think of Thor, we think of Captain America. Like, we think of these strong individuals, and Scott and Hope, Ant-Man and Wasp, that's not them. The fact that it was the two of them and they were able to take him out. It's like, I just find it hard to believe that this guy who traveled through time and universes, killing entire civilizations, was taken out by Ant-Man and Wasp. Like, I don't know. It just... We know that the other Kang variants are bad and worse than Kang the Conqueror, but we don't know them yet. And it's like, it kind of feels a little bit like Loki spoilers for Loki, where he who remains, the one who's at the end of all time, gets taken out by them. But ultimately, Loki, Sylvie, they are gods. So it makes a little bit more sense than two regular people with random tech suits taking out a guy who traveled through space and time and killing civilizations as he went. If we were going to take him out in this movie, it should have been when we rallied everybody together in that big Avengers Endgame style fight. That's when we should have taken him out. When everybody was working together to try to take him out. That is when you take him out. You don't let him survive that and then have him get taken out by Ant-Man and Wasp. I love them. I just think Kang the Conqueror was too big of a villain for them. They kind of needed a lower level threat, someone who could go toe to toe with them and match them, I guess. I don't know. It was something that really bothered me, and talking about it, I realized that it bothered me more than it actually did when I was watching it. And maybe he's not dead. Maybe. I don't know. But he probably is, and it's like, it feels almost like a waste. Like, yeah, that's what I'm thinking about it. But back to something that I loved, and it actually has zero to do with the plot of this movie. And that is with the end title card where they're like Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. We see Ant and Man, and then Quantumania comes through. And it took me until that moment. That was the moment I realized that Ant and Man existed within the word Quantumania. I never put that together until the movie's like, here's the end card. It's there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just realized that. So, thank you, end title card, for letting me know that Ant and Man is in Quantumania. Yeah. But now we got to talk about the post-credit scenes. There's 2 of them. I started wondering whether there was going to be 2 or only 1 because it was taking so long to get to that second one. But the first one, we have several Kang variants that are meeting to discuss the fact that Kang the Conqueror, aka the exiled one, is dead. And then all of them appear. Like, there are so many of them, and there are probably too many of them. And I'm like, are we going to actually see all of them, or are they just going to sort of be there in the background? I don't know. But it was a fun post-credit scene. Am I supposed to think that because the other Kang variants are saying that Kang the Conqueror is dead, that he is actually dead? I don't know. I'm still kind of hoping he's not, because it feels like a waste. It feels like a waste. Anyways, then we get to the second post-credit scene. And as suspected, it involves another Kang variant. This one named Victor Timely. I'm sure that means something to the people that are familiar with Kang and his variants. It means nothing to me because I'm not really familiar with any of this. But Victor Timely is doing a show, giving a lecture about time. I'm not really sure what he's doing. I genuinely don't know what he was doing. But he was talking about time. And then we cut to the audience. And we see Loki. And we see Mobius. And they're there in the audience. And they're like, what is this? And this is presumably a setup for Loki season 2. And honestly, cannot wait for that. So, yeah. Overall, I think that there were things about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania that I really did enjoy. And then there were things that were just meh. And then there were things that were really disappointing. But ultimately, it was a fun watch. And I did enjoy it. But one thing that I realized while sort of going through all of this was it feels almost like a Disney Plus series in a weird way. Like, we have the whole beginning of the movie where like next to nothing is happening. It's just knowledge dumping. And then we get to like the end and then there's this big battle, and it reminded me very much of a lot of the Marvel Disney Plus series. WandaVision in particular. Loki even to some degree. Hawkeye kind of. Miss Marvel even. Like Moon Knight. I'm just thinking of like all these Marvel Disney Plus series where it's like the first few episodes, there's not a whole lot happening. It's just setup and knowledge dumping, and then you get to like the end and you get this big battle, and then that's it. And this Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania movie really felt like a Disney Plus series. Am I mad that it feels like a Disney Plus series rather than a Marvel movie where, let's be real, there's kind of less there's less knowledge dumping. I can't think of what the word is, but there's less knowledge dumping and more things happening. I don't know. I think I kind of like it because it kind of shook up the mold for the Marvel movies, but ultimately it does result in a pretty slow moving movie. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it doesn't take away from my enjoyment of the movie. It's just something that I noticed, and yeah. So that is my thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. But let me know, what did you all think of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you think it could have been better? Do you think it's the best Marvel movie? Do you think it's the worst Marvel movie? Do you think it's the best Ant-Man movie? Do you think it's the worst Ant-Man movie? Let me know all your Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania thoughts in the comments down below. Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more Marvel content.